She was already walking differently. Not limping, not dragging, but walking the way a woman walks when she has spent the last 14 months learning a new center of gravity inside her own skin. Chin forward, shoulders back, but not forced. The particular posture of someone who has recently stopped carrying a weight she did not realize she had been holding until the day it was removed. The divorce had been finalized 9 weeks ago. She was not thinking about that right now. She was thinking about the rain and whether she had left the window above the kitchen counter cracked open the way she sometimes did when the apartment got too warm. Because Osaka in September held onto its humidity the way old arguments hold onto rooms long after the people have left. Her name was Sable Orion, 29 years old, American. From a town in eastern Virginia she never described to anyone because describing it would require context she did not feel like giving. She had arrived in Osaka 18 months ago as a married woman with a teaching visa, a suitcase, and a plan that belonged mostly to her then-husband. She was leaving this particular Tuesday evening as an unmarried woman with a contract extension she had negotiated herself, an apartment she had chosen herself, and a pair of shoes that were not appropriate for this amount of rain, but that she had bought with her own money on a Saturday afternoon, when she had felt like buying something beautiful for no reason other than the fact that she could. The shoes were the problem right now, not a crisis, an inconvenience. She had taken the long route from the language school where she taught, because the shorter path cut through the underpass near Shinimamiya Station, and she did not like walking it after dark. A decision she had made once and honored every day since without questioning it, because she trusted herself when she made those decisions, even when the weather argued against them. She had 7 minutes left on this route. She knew because she walked it 4 times a week and had stopped timing it months ago. The knowledge lived in her legs now. 7 minutes to her building door, up 3 flights, shoes off in the Genkan, window check, rice cooker on. Sit down. That was the plan. The plan was ordinary, and the ordinariness was the whole point. She had spent 14 months rebuilding a life that was ordinary in exactly the ways she had chosen. And she protected that ordinariness the way you protect something you built with your hands from materials that were not free. The rain picked up. Not gradually. Osaka rain did not negotiate. It arrived in full and expected you to have prepared. She had not prepared. The shoes, the missing umbrella she could picture hanging on the hook beside her front door, the thin jacket that had been sufficient at 4 in the afternoon and was no longer sufficient now. She was cataloging these errors without self-pity, because self-pity required time, and the rain was not going to wait for her feelings about it. She passed the narrow street that ran alongside the old textile warehouse. Half the street lights on this block had been out for weeks, reported and unfixed. The buildings here were older, squeezed together, the kind of architecture that creates pockets of deep shadow between structures, even when the rest of the street is lit. She walked this stretch faster than the rest, not running, moving with the specific efficiency of a woman who has lived alone in a foreign city long enough to know which stretches deserve a quicker pace. And then she heard the sound. Not a voice, exactly. A sound that lived underneath voice. The kind of sound a person makes when they have used up everything that would have made it a word, and all that remains is the exhale of effort. Low, guttural, coming from somewhere in the gap between the warehouse wall and the rusted service gate of the building next to it. She slowed, not stopped, slowed, her body making the calculation before her mind had time to assemble the options. It could be nothing. It could be an animal. It could be something she did not want to walk toward. Alone in the rain at 8:40 on a Tuesday night in a city where she knew precisely 4 people well enough to call them. She kept her phone in her right hand. She had been holding it already, using the flashlight to check the pavement where the streetlights failed. She adjusted the beam without thinking about it. The way you adjust when you have been a woman alone in places where the light is unreliable and you have already decided, not tonight and not ever again, that the darkness is not going to make your decisions for you. The light found them. 2 figures, one on the ground, one standing over them with a posture that did not require interpretation. A man, heavyset, one hand gripping the collar of a person beneath him, the other hand pulled back. The person on the ground was small, not a child, but not full grown. A teenager, maybe 16, maybe younger, curled on the wet concrete with both arms wrapped around something held against their chest. Sable did not scream. She did not freeze. She had done both of those things at different points in her life, and she knew what they cost, and she was not paying that price tonight. She said one word, loud, clear, the kind of voice that does not come from volume, but from a place behind the sternum that most people never access because they have never needed to. Hey. The man looked up. The rain was between them, maybe 12 feet of wet air and broken light, and she could see his face move through surprise into something harder. He said something in Japanese she caught only the edges of. The tone was enough. Go away. Not your business. She did not go away. She raised her phone and she did the thing that changes the geometry of every situation like this. She let him see that the screen was active, that the camera was open, that his face was now a fact stored somewhere outside of this alley. She did not say she was recording. She did not threaten to call the police. She simply held the phone steady with the calm of someone who has learned that the most dangerous thing you can do to a person committing violence in the dark is to introduce light. He released the collar, stepped back, said something else, shorter, uglier, and then he turned and went through the service gate and was gone. The whole thing took less than 20 seconds. 20 seconds between the moment she heard the sound and the moment she was alone in the rain with whoever was on the ground. If you are watching this right now, I need you to understand what just happened. A woman, alone, at night, in a foreign city, made a decision in less than 2 seconds that most people would not make with 2 hours to think about it. Stay with me, because what she does next is the part that will keep you up tonight. She was already moving toward the figure on the concrete. She knelt, the rain soaking through her skirt at the knees, instant and cold, and she did not care about her skirt. The person on the ground was a boy, 15, maybe 16. Korean, she thought, though in this light and this rain she was working from fragments. School uniform, dark blazer soaked through, a gash above his left eyebrow leaking a thin line of blood that the rain kept diluting before it could settle. He was conscious. His eyes were open, fixed on her face with the wide, unblinking focus of someone in shock. His arms were still wrapped around the thing he had been protecting, a bag, small, leather, clutched against his ribs like it contained something that mattered more than the beating. She put one hand on his shoulder, not heavy, present. The way you touch someone when the most important thing is that they know there is another human being in the situation who is not going to hurt them. Are you okay? Can you hear me? He blinked. His mouth moved. Nothing came out. Then, very quietly, in English, that sounded practiced and careful and very far from home. Please do not leave. She did not leave. She pulled her jacket off without thinking about it. The rain hit her arms and shoulders immediately, the kind of cold that does not build but arrives complete, and she draped it over him because his blazer was useless and his body was shaking in the particular way that is not just cold, but the whole system responding to threat. She moved him gently until his back was against the warehouse wall, out of the center of the alley where the water was pooling. He let her move him. His arms did not release the bag. She did not ask him to let it go. What is your name? She said it slowly, not loud. The voice you use when you need someone to focus on one thing at a time instead of everything at once. He swallowed, his eyes still on her face. Ki-hoon. He said it like an answer on a test he was afraid of failing. Ki-hoon. Okay, Ki-hoon. I am Sable. I am going to stay with you. Can you tell me if you are hurt anywhere besides your head? He seemed to process this in layers. The question arriving in English, translating, the answer assembling, returning. My side. He touched his ribs on the left with the hand not gripping the bag. He pushed me into the gate. She looked at the rusted service gate. The latch mechanism had a protruding bolt at roughly the height of a teenager's ribcage. She noted this without saying anything about it. Can you breathe okay? Deep breath for me. She watched his chest move. He winced, but the breath completed. Not broken then, probably. Bruised. She was not a doctor. She was a woman who had grown up with two older brothers who played football and had learned to tell the difference between a thing that needed an emergency room and a thing that needed ice and time. She called emergency services. Her Japanese was functional. She had worked at it systematically, without shortcuts, because she had decided when she arrived in this country that she was not going to be a person who lived somewhere for years and never learned to ask for help in the local language. She gave the location, the situation, and the visible injuries. Assault on a minor. She did not know who the attacker was. He had left through the service gate heading east. The boy was conscious and responsive but in shock, and possibly had injured ribs. They told her someone was on the way. She said how long. They said they would dispatch as quickly as possible. She said that was not a number. They gave her a number. 15 to 20 minutes. The rain was a factor. Multiple calls active. She hung up and looked at Ki-hoon. He was watching her with the particular expression of a teenager trying to figure out whether this adult was someone he could trust. She recognized that look. She had worn it herself at his age, scanning every new person for the specific signals that separated safe from not safe. She let him look. She did not rush him. Why did he do that to you? She asked it without urgency. Not an interrogation. A question from someone sitting next to him in the rain, who was not going anywhere. Ki-hoon's hands tightened on the bag. He looked down at it, then back at her. I do not know him. He said it carefully. I was walking from the station. I had my headphones in. I did not hear him coming. He grabbed the bag and I did not let go, and he pulled me in here. What is in the bag, Ki-hoon? He was quiet for a moment. Then he unzipped it just enough for her to see. A small velvet case. Inside the case, she could see the edge of something metallic, delicate, a piece of jewelry. Old. The kind of old that does not mean cheap. That means someone held on to this for a very long time. It is my grandmother's, he said. She passed away. My mother asked me to bring it from the jeweler. It was being repaired. He zipped the bag closed again, held it against his ribs. He had taken a beating in a rainy alley rather than release his dead grandmother's jewelry to a stranger. She looked at this boy and understood something about him in that single detail that would have taken months of conversation to learn. He was someone who held on to things that mattered. She filed that. 15 minutes, she said. Someone is coming in 15 minutes. I am staying with you until they get here and after they get here. You are wet, he said. He had noticed. Through shock and pain and fear, he had noticed that she had given him her jacket and was now sitting in the rain with nothing but a thin blouse and her arms crossed against the cold. I am fine, she said. You are shaking, he said. She was. She had not noticed until he said it, and now she could not stop noticing. The rain had been working on her for several minutes, and her body was responding on its own schedule regardless of what her mind had decided about being fine. I have been colder, she said. And it was true. She had been colder. She had been colder in her own apartment, sitting on her own couch, next to a man who was technically still her husband, telling her that she was not the woman he had thought he was marrying, and that the distance between who she was and who he had imagined was a distance he could not close. That had been cold in a way that September rain in Osaka could not touch. She sat with Ki-hoon in the rain and waited. She talked. Not about anything important. About the rain. About Osaka. About the language school where she taught. And the particular chaos of teaching English to a room full of 7-year-olds who had more energy than any 7 human beings should reasonably contain. She talked because the sound of her voice was a wall between him and the silence was where the fear lived, and she was not going to let the fear have him. Not while she was here. He listened. Slowly, carefully, his breathing evened out. His grip on the bag loosened by 1 degree. He leaned his head back against the warehouse wall and closed his eyes for a moment. Not sleeping. Resting. Trusting. A boy who had been alone in an alley with a stranger's fist above him, deciding that this woman, this stranger in the rain, was safe enough to close his eyes around. She watched the rain come down and did not move. The 15 minutes became 22. She knew because she checked her phone twice. The cold had crossed a threshold somewhere around the 14-minute mark, and her body had started making demands her mind could not override. Her teeth were doing the thing she hated, the involuntary chatter that made her feel like she was not in control of her own jaw. And she clenched them shut and breathed through her nose and did not let Ki-hoon see any of it. He had started talking on his own. Small things at first. The name of his school, the station he had come from, the jeweler who had repaired the necklace, a small shop near Namba that his mother had used for years, then larger things. He was in Osaka for the semester. An exchange arrangement his father had organized through the company. He lived with a host family in Tennoji. They were kind, but he missed Seoul. He missed his room. He missed the particular way his grandmother's apartment had smelled, ginger and sesame oil, and something he could never identify that he had stopped smelling when she died, because it had only ever existed in that specific place, with that specific person. Sable listened. She did not interrupt. She asked questions that were not questions but permissions. Small openings. Tell me about her. What was she like? And he walked through them because he needed to talk, and she was there, and she had not left. And that combination, the simplest combination in the world, a person who stays and listens, was apparently enough. She learned his grandmother had raised him for 3 years while his parents worked. She learned his father ran a company. She did not ask what kind. He did not say. She learned his mother had sent him to collect the necklace because his mother believed that certain things should be carried by hand, not shipped, not delegated, not entrusted to someone who did not understand what they were holding. And she learned, without him saying it directly, that the necklace was the only physical thing his grandmother had left behind that still felt like her. And he had held on to it while a stranger hit him in an alley, because letting go was not a thing he knew how to do with the things that mattered. Somewhere around the 18th minute his voice trailed off. His eyes closed again, slower this time, heavier, and his breathing went shallow and distant. His head tilted against her shoulder and his body went slack in a way that was different from resting. He was drifting. She could feel the weight of him changing, becoming the kind of weight that means a person is no longer fully present. She adjusted her grip, pulled him closer, and pressed her hand flat against his chest to feel the rise and fall. The rain came down. The alley was silent. And she was alone, with a boy she did not know, slipping towards something she could not name, and her body was shaking, and no one was coming yet. And she was the only thing between him and whatever was waiting on the other side of consciousness. She said it without meaning to, under her breath, not to him, to herself, to the part of her that needed to hear it said out loud in order to keep holding on. I am not going to let anyone else fall while I am standing right here. She did not know she had said it. It came from the place behind language, the place where promises live before they become words. And it left her mouth and entered the rain, and she did not hear it leave. But it left. Ki-hun stirred a few minutes later. His eyes opened again, unfocused, and he said something she did not catch, and then went quiet and then started breathing more evenly, and she held him and did not move. If you are listening to this and wondering what it costs a person to sit in the rain for 22 minutes with a boy she does not know, giving away her only jacket, shaking in a blouse that stopped being any kind of protection 15 minutes ago, choosing to stay because a child asked her not to leave. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Because the cost was not the cold. The cold was just weather. The cost was the choice, made once and held without renegotiation, to put someone else's safety above her own comfort in a city where she had no one to call if things went wrong. No family here, no partner anymore. 4 friends, none of whom lived within 30 minutes. She was the only infrastructure she had built for herself, and she was spending it on a boy in an alley because he had said, "Please do not leave," and she had heard it the way you hear things that are not really requests, but statements of need so fundamental they bypass every practical calculation your mind tries to run. She spent everything she had in those 22 minutes. Not because the situation required heroism. It did not. She was not fighting anyone. She was not performing a rescue. She was sitting in the rain keeping a frightened teenager company, the simplest act in the world. And it cost her everything because everything was what she had decided to give. The ambulance arrived with lights but no siren. 2 paramedics, a man and a woman, efficient and calm. They assessed Ki-hun. They looked at Sable. The female paramedic said something to her in Japanese, and then switched to English when she saw Sable's face processing the grammar. "You are very cold. You should come too." "I am fine," Sable said. It was the second time she had said it tonight, and it was less true now than the first time. She was shivering in a way that had moved past uncomfortable into something her body was doing independently of her instructions. The paramedic looked at her the way medical professionals look at people who say they are fine when they are obviously not fine. Kindly, without argument, with the particular patience of someone who knows that arguing will not work, but waiting will. "I will ride with him," Sable said. "He should not be alone." The paramedic nodded. They loaded Ki-hun into the ambulance. Sable climbed in and sat on the bench across from him, her wet clothes dripping on the floor, the heater in the ambulance hitting her skin like something she had forgotten existed. She felt her muscles begin to unlock one layer at a time, the shivering getting worse before it got better because that is what the body does when it finally allows itself to feel what it has been suppressing. Ki-hun watched her from the gurney. The cut above his eye had been cleaned and taped. He was wrapped in a thermal blanket. He looked small inside it. "Sable," he said. "Yes. Thank you for not leaving." She looked at him. "You already said that." "I know," he said. "I wanted to say it when I was not scared anymore. So you would know I meant it differently." She held his gaze for a moment. Something moved behind her expression that she did not let arrive on her face. She nodded once. The ambulance moved through the rain toward the hospital, and she sat with her arms wrapped around herself, finally allowing her body to shake the way it had been wanting to for 22 minutes. And she did not look away from the boy on the gurney because she had told him she was staying, and she meant it all the way through. At the hospital, they moved quickly. Ki-hun was taken to an examination room. Sable was directed to a chair in the corridor and given a blanket that smelled like industrial laundry and was the warmest thing she had felt in an hour. A nurse came to check on her. She was not injured. She was cold and wet, and her blood pressure was slightly low, and she needed dry clothes and something warm to drink and rest. She said she was fine for the 3rd time that night, and the nurse wrote something on a chart without acknowledging the statement which Sable respected. She sat in the corridor for 40 minutes. She did not call anyone. There was no one to call who could do anything useful at this hour. She texted her colleague Marin at the language school to say she would be late tomorrow. Marin replied with a string of question marks and then a single word. Okay. The hospital hummed around her. That specific sound that hospitals make at night. Not quiet, never quiet, but operating at a lower frequency than daytime. She sat in it and let the warmth of the blanket do its work, and waited because she had told Ki-hoon she was staying, and he was still somewhere inside this building. A doctor came out. Young, efficient, tired in the way all hospital doctors are tired at 9:30 on a Tuesday night. He told her Ki-hoon had bruised ribs, a minor laceration above the eyebrow that required 3 stitches, and no concussion. He was stable. He was being held for observation. His host family had been contacted. His father had been contacted. She nodded. She asked if she could see him before she left. The doctor hesitated. She was not family. She was not his guardian. She was a woman who had found him in an alley and stayed. I am the person who was with him, she said. She said it simply, without insistence. The doctor looked at her face, and whatever he saw there moved him past the hesitation. 5 minutes, he said. She went in. Ki-hoon was propped up in the bed, his ribs wrapped, his face cleaned up, the taped cut looking smaller under proper hospital light. He looked like a kid who had had a terrible night and was now in a warm bed and was beginning to process the distance between where he had been an hour ago and where he was now. She stood at the foot of the bed. She did not sit. She was not going to stay long enough to sit. You look better, she said. He almost smiled. You look warmer, he said. Getting there. A pause. The machines doing their quiet work around them. Sable. He said her name with care, the way someone says a word they have decided to remember. My father will want to know who helped me. Can I tell him your name? She looked at him. A boy asking permission to pass her name to his father. Polite. Careful. Aware even in a hospital bed at 15 that names carry weight and should not be given without consent. You can tell him my name, she said. He nodded. The small, serious nod she had seen in the alley. Then he reached across the bed and held out his hand. Not for a handshake, just held it out. Open. The way children do when they are asking for contact without knowing how to ask. She took it. Held it for a moment. His hand was warm now. That meant everything was working. She squeezed once, let go, and stepped back from the bed. Take care of yourself, Ki-hoon. He watched her walk toward the door. She was almost through it when he said quietly, the kind of quiet that carries further than volume because it comes from somewhere real. You are the bravest person I have ever met. She stopped in the doorway. She did not turn around. She stood there for a moment with the corridor light falling across her shoulders and the hospital noise moving around her. Then she kept walking. She did not know that those words were going to reach his father's ears within the hour. She did not know what they were going to set in motion. She walked out of the hospital into the rain and started the 20-minute walk home because the direct bus had stopped running and she could not afford a taxi this week. And she was Sable Orion and she walked home when she needed to walk home. And that was the end of it. Subscribe now and stay with me, because what happens when his father finds out who she is changes every single thing. Every single thing. Yang Chae-won arrived at the hospital at 11:14 at night. He came the way a man comes when he has spent 90 minutes on a call being rerouted through 3 assistants and a host family coordinator and an airline desk and a hospital switchboard, and has been told at each stage a slightly different version of the same sentence. Your son was attacked. Your son is stable. Your son is in the hospital in Osaka. He had boarded a private charter from Seoul. He had spoken to no one on the flight except his chief of staff, a woman named Do Yeon-soo, who had been with him for 9 years and who managed his silence the way other people managed conversation. Chae-won was not a man who showed the shape of what he felt. He was 46 years old. He had built a logistics company from a single warehouse in Incheon into a network that operated in 11 countries. He had done all of this by building a specific internal architecture, a system of walls and corridors inside himself that let him move through crisis without the crisis reaching the parts of him that could not afford to be touched. He arrived at the hospital and went straight to Ki-hoon's room. Ki-hoon was awake, his face bruised, his ribs wrapped, and his eyes carrying the particular look of a 15-year-old who had been waiting for his father for 2 hours and had not been certain, in the way children are never certain, even when they know it logically, that he was actually coming. Chaewon stood in the doorway for a moment. Then he crossed the room and put his hand on the back of his son's neck and held it there. Not a hug. Something older than a hug. An anchoring. Ki-hoon leaned into it the way he had done since he was small, and Chaewon felt something inside his chest do the thing it always did when he confirmed with his own hands that his son was whole. A lock releasing. A door he had not known he had been holding shut, swinging open briefly, then closing again because this was a hospital and there was business to attend to. He sat with Ki-hoon for 20 minutes. He got the story, the station, the alley, the man, the bag, and the woman. Ki-hoon told it in order, the way his father had taught him to deliver information. What happened? In what sequence? Who was involved? What the outcome was? But when he got to Sable, he stopped being efficient. He slowed down. He described the flashlight first, the way she had said, "Hey," one word, and the man had looked up. The phone she had held without threatening, just held, like a fact the man could not argue with. And then the rain and the jacket and the way she had sat with him for 22 minutes, shaking, soaked through, refusing to leave. She was shaking, Ki-hoon said. The whole time. She gave me her jacket and she was shaking, and I told her. And she said she had been colder. He paused. I think she meant something else by that. Chaewon listened without interrupting. When Ki-hoon finished, he asked one question. Her name. Sable, Ki-hoon said. Sable Orion. Chaewon repeated it once. Not as a question. The same way a man files something in a place where it will not be misplaced. He found the attending doctor. He got the medical summary. He asked about the woman, whether she had been treated, whether she was still in the building. The doctor told him she had refused treatment, had visited his son briefly, and had left approximately 90 minutes ago. On foot, the doctor added, because the nurse at the station had offered to call her a taxi and she had declined. Chaewon stood in the corridor processing this. A woman who had intervened in an assault on a child she did not know, given away her only jacket, sat in the rain for over 20 minutes, ridden in the ambulance, waited 40 minutes in the corridor, and walked home in the rain because she could not afford a taxi, and had refused the one offered. Du Yeonsu was standing 6 feet behind him in the corridor. She had not spoken. She had the file she always assembled on the flight, the basic information architecture that Chaewon needed to operate. Host family contact, police report status, hospital discharge timeline. He turned to her. Find out who she is. Not the name. I have the name. Find out who she is. Employment, housing situation, visa status, whether she has anyone in this city. He said it the way he said things that were not instructions but conclusions. Statements of what was already going to happen. Yeonsu did not write it down. She never wrote things down. She nodded once and was already moving. He went back to Ki-hoon's room. His son was lying on his side, the thermal blanket pulled up to his chin, the bag with his grandmother's necklace on the table beside the bed, within arm's reach. He was not asleep. He was lying still with his eyes open, looking at the wall, and Chaewon recognized the look because he had worn it himself at that age. The look of someone replaying something they cannot change and trying to find the place inside themselves where it is going to live. He sat in the chair beside the bed. He did not tell his son to sleep. He did not offer reassurance that would have required Ki-hoon to pretend he was reassured. He sat with him in the quiet hospital room, while the rain continued outside, and the night staff moved through the corridors and his chief of staff worked the phones in the waiting area, building the picture of a woman named Sable Orion, who had turned toward his son in an alley in the rain and had not turned away. Leave a comment right now. Has a stranger ever done something for you or your child that changed the way you saw the world? Tell me about it, because I promise you other people need to hear that story as much as I needed to tell you this one. Ki-hoon's mother arrived in Osaka 2 days later. Nam Sarai flew in from Seoul on a Thursday morning and went straight to her son. She did not call Chaewon first. She did not coordinate with Do Yeon-soo. She came because her son had been hurt, and coordination was something other people needed. She needed to see his face. She sat with Ki-hoon for an hour. She touched the stitches above his eyebrow with a fingertip so light it barely made contact, as though the wound might reopen under the weight of her attention. She asked him every question. She listened to every answer. She held his hand and did not cry because Sorey had made a decision many years ago that her son would never see her frightened, and she held that decision the way she held all of her decisions. Absolutely. Then she asked about the woman. Ki-hoon told her what he had told his father. The flashlight, the jacket, the rain, the 22 minutes. The way Sable had talked to keep the silence away from him. And Sarai listened and noted every detail the way she noted every detail, precisely, filing each one into a structure she was building in her mind, a structure designed to protect her son from whatever was coming next. Because Sarai understood something that neither Chaewon nor Ki-hoon had arrived at yet. A stranger had saved her son. That stranger was now connected to her family. And connections to her family, in her experience, were never simple, never free, and never without consequence. She found Sable on a Friday afternoon. She had her own resources, quieter than Chaewon's, less official, and equally thorough. She knew the apartment building, the floor, the unit number. She knew about the teaching position, the divorce, and the visa. She knocked. Sable answered. She was wearing a cotton shirt and loose trousers, and her hair was pulled back, and she looked like a woman in the middle of a quiet Friday evening who had not expected a visitor. Sarai took this in without appearing to. The apartment behind Sable was small and clean and orderly in the way that things are orderly when a person has limited space and has made peace with it rather than fighting against it. "My name is Nam Sarai," she said. "I am Ki-hoon's mother." Sable looked at her for a moment. Then she stepped back from the door. "Please come in." Sarai entered the apartment the way she entered every room, with the full awareness of its dimensions and its contents, and the person standing in it. She sat in the single armchair near the window. Sable sat on the edge of the sofa across from her. Neither of them pretended this was a social call. "I came to thank you," Sarai said. "What you did for my son was significant, and I am grateful." "He is brave," Sable said. "He held on to that bag the whole time." Sarai's expression shifted at the mention of the bag, a micro-movement. She knew what was in the bag and what it meant, and the fact that Sable knew too told her that Ki-hoon had trusted this woman with information he did not give easily. "I want to make sure," Sarai said, with the careful warmth of someone choosing each word for structural integrity rather than feeling, "that you understand the situation clearly. My son comes from a family that attracts a certain kind of attention. People sometimes after an event like this assume a relationship that is more than what it is." She paused. "I am not accusing you of anything. I am telling you how the world works around us, so that you can make informed decisions about your involvement going forward." The room was quiet. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Traffic sounds from the street below, distant and indifferent. Sable looked at her. She did not look away. She did not look down. She held Soray's gaze with the steady calm of a woman who had been underestimated before and had stopped finding it surprising. I did not know who your son's father was when I found him in that alley, Sable said. I did not know who his mother was. I did not know his last name until a doctor said it in the hallway while I was sitting in a chair in wet clothes, waiting to make sure he was okay. She paused. Your son was being attacked, and I stopped it, and I stayed with him because he asked me to stay. That is the complete thing. There is nothing behind it and nothing underneath it, and I do not want anything from you or your family. Sarai was still. Not the stillness of someone thinking, the stillness of someone recalculating. She had arrived with a framework, and the framework had met something it could not contain. A woman who did not defend herself because she did not feel accused, who did not explain herself because she did not feel the explanation was owed, who simply stated what had happened as though the facts were sufficient because she believed they were. I see, Sarai said. I appreciate you coming, Sable said. I hope Ki-hoon is healing well. There was a pause. Sarai stood. She smoothed her coat. At the door, she turned back and looked at Sable one more time, and what moved across her face was not warmth, but something adjacent to it. Something that would need more time and more information before it became whatever it was going to become. He has not stopped talking about you, Sarai said, since the hospital. She paused. That is not something he does. Then she left. And Sable stood in her apartment doorway listening to the sound of expensive shoes on a concrete stairwell and wondering whether she had just been thanked or warned or both. Comment below, right now. Team Soray was right to be cautious. Or team she should have just said thank you and left it at that. Pick your side because what happens next makes that argument a whole lot more complicated. The following week, Sable came home from the language school to find an envelope under her door. Inside, a single card, cream-colored, heavy stock, handwritten in precise English. Miss Orion, your medical consultation at Sumitomo Clinic has been scheduled for Monday at 10. A car will collect you at 9:30. Your housing lease has been extended through the end of next year. The outstanding balance on your visa renewal application has been resolved. Please contact me with any questions. Du Yeon-soo. A phone number at the bottom. Nothing else. Sable sat on the edge of her bed and read the card 3 times. She had not asked for a medical consultation. She had refused treatment at the hospital. She had not asked for a lease extension. She had been managing her housing on her own terms with her own money, carefully, month by month, the way she managed everything. And the visa renewal. She had been carrying that weight for weeks. The paperwork, the fees, the particular anxiety of being a divorced foreign woman in a country where her residency status was tied to employment that could change at any time. She had been handling it, slowly, carefully, on her own schedule, because that was how she handled things. And now someone she had never met had reached into the most private architecture of her life and rearranged it without asking. She picked up her phone. She did not call the number on the card. She called the hospital and asked for the patient named Yong Ki-hoon. She was told he had been discharged. After 3 calls and several minutes of patient effort, she ended up with the number for Chaewon's assistant, which turned out to be the same number on the card. She called it. Du Yeon-soo answered on the second ring. This is Sable Orion. Miss Orion, how can I help you? You can explain to me who authorized changes to my lease and my visa application without my knowledge or consent. A pause. Not uncomfortable. Professional. Mr. Young authorized the arrangements. His preference was that your recovery period not be complicated by administrative concerns. His preference? Sable said. Yes. I did not ask for any of this. No, Yeon-soo said. You did not. The line was quiet for a moment. Sable could hear the shape of the conversation that was supposed to happen here, the gracious acceptance, the thank you, the smooth transition into gratitude that would make everything easy and comfortable and settled. She was not going to have that conversation. "I need to speak with Mr. Yang directly," she said. "Not through a card, not through you. I understand this is not how he operates, but I need him to hear what I have to say from me, and not from a summary of me." Yansu was quiet for one beat. Then, without resistance, without the friction Sable had been bracing for, "Of course. I will arrange it." She hung up. She looked at the card again. She looked at her apartment. The lease extension meant she did not have to think about housing for 14 months. The visa resolution meant the low-grade fear she had been carrying since the divorce, the specific fear of being asked to leave a country she had chosen and was not finished choosing, was gone. Someone had removed it while she was teaching 7-year-olds how to conjugate irregular verbs. She should have felt relieved. Part of her did. The practical part. The part that kept the lists and managed the budget and lay awake at 2 in the morning calculating how many months of savings she had left. That part of her exhaled. But the rest of her, the part that had rebuilt herself from the foundation up after a man had told her she was not what he expected, felt something closer to alarm, because she had not saved a boy in an alley to become someone's project. She had not sat in the rain for 22 minutes to be installed in an arrangement she had not chosen. She had not done any of it for anything, and the fact that someone was now converting her actions into a debt she had never agreed to carry was the exact opposite of everything she had spent the last 14 months building. She put the card in the kitchen drawer. She made dinner. She ate it alone at her small table by the window. And she thought about what she was going to say to Yang Chaewon when she met him, and she was going to meet him, and he was going to hear it clearly. What would you do? Honestly, someone solves your biggest problem without asking. The thing you have been losing sleep over. The thing that sits on your chest at 3 in the morning. And they just make it go away. Do you accept it? Do you push it back? Comment below because both answers reveal something true about who you are, and I want to know which one you would choose. They met on a Monday. Yeonsu had arranged a private room at a small restaurant in Kitahama, not the Ritz-Carlton, not Sable's apartment, a place that belonged to neither of them. Sable understood the geography of that choice the moment she walked in, and noted it without saying so. Chaewon was already seated when she arrived. He stood when she entered. He was not what she had built in her mind from the composite of Ki-hoon's careful manners, and Sorai's sharp precision, and Yeonsu's seamless efficiency. He was quieter than all of that. He had the face of a man who had spent 2 decades in rooms where everyone wanted something from him, and had learned to be fully present without giving anything away. He looked at her. She felt it. Not a glance, not an assessment, a look. The kind that starts at the surface and does not stop there. He was seeing her the way she had seen Ki-hoon in the alley, in pieces that assembled into a whole, and she could tell from the way his expression shifted, a micro-adjustment around the eyes, barely visible, that whatever he was assembling did not match what he had been expecting. She sat. She did not wait for him to speak first. "I want to say what I came to say before this becomes a conversation about your generosity," she said. "Because that is not what this is about." He nodded. "Please. I did not go into that alley for you. I did not know who your son was. I was walking home in the rain and I heard a sound, and I turned toward it because that is what I do when I hear someone in trouble. I sat with your son for 22 minutes because he asked me not to leave. Not because of who his father is, not because of what might come after." She paused. "I am not a problem you need to solve. I am not a situation your staff needs to manage. I am a woman who helped your son, and I would like to return to the life I was living before I did it." Chaewon listened to every word without moving. When she finished, the room was quiet. The restaurant sounds filtered in from beyond the private door. Dishes, low conversation, the particular soundtrack of a Monday lunch in a city going about its business. "I heard you," he said. She waited. She could tell there was more. And I want you to know, he said, that the visa renewal you were managing has been completed. She stared at him. She had prepared the refusal. It was organized, clear, and ready. And he had just said the one thing she had not built a wall against. He had found the single piece of her life that was most vulnerable, the one that woke her up at night, the one that carried the specific terror of being told you no longer belong in the place you have chosen to belong, and he had removed it. It was in a complicated position, he said. The divorce created gaps in the documentation. Your employer's HR department had submitted incomplete supporting materials. I had it reviewed and corrected. If you want to tell me I overstepped, I will accept that. The work is done and cannot be reversed. Your status in this country is no longer in question. A pause. That is not a transaction, he said. I do not expect anything in return. I am telling you because you have a right to know. And because, he stopped. He started again. Because you were alone in the rain with my son for 22 minutes, and you did not leave, and the least I could do was make sure the country you chose to build your life in did not punish you for it. The room was very still. Sable's hands were folded on the table. She looked at them for a moment, then back at him. That was a very significant thing to do without asking, she said. Yes, he said. It was. I need you to understand something. My life is not available for decisions that do not include me. I have spent the last 14 months rebuilding myself from a situation where someone else was making choices about my life without my input. I left that. I am not going back to it. Not for anyone. Not for any reason. He held her gaze. I understand. I am asking you, going forward, to tell me where the boundaries are. I do not always see them when other people have built them. I am not careless. I am thorough. And sometimes thoroughness crosses lines I did not know were there. I am asking you to show me where yours are. She studied his face. There was nothing in it she could identify as manipulation. No charm deployed strategically. No warmth manufactured for effect. What was there was harder to categorize. A man who had made a decision in a hospital corridor the night his son was attacked and had not revised it and was not going to. Asking only to be told how far he was allowed to go. Not a romantic gesture. Not a business arrangement. Something older and more inconvenient than either. The recognition of something owed from someone who understood it could never be fully settled and was asking only for the chance to try. The silence between them held for a long moment. Not uncomfortable. Full. The kind of silence that happens when two people arrive at the same point from entirely different directions and find themselves standing in the same place. Ki-hoon wants to see me again, she said. I know. He told you. Has not talked about anything else for a week, he said. There was something in his voice when he said it. Not amusement exactly. Something warmer than that and more careful. Something shifted in her face. Not quite a smile. The place where a smile would be if she were a person who gave them freely. She was not. She had learned to be selective about what she gave away and to whom. But something moved there. He is a good kid, she said. He is, Chaewon said. He is different since that night. I do not know what you said to him, but he came back from it changed. She thought about Ki-hoon in the alley, the way he had closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the wall. The specific weight of a child deciding to trust a stranger. He held his grandmother's necklace the entire time, she said. While a man was hitting him, he did not let go of it. Chaewon looked at the table. Something was moving through him quietly, the way currents move beneath still water, invisible from the surface but reshaping everything underneath. When he looked up, his eyes were different. Not softer. Deeper. That necklace, he said. Then stopped. Started again. My mother wore it every day for 30 years. It was the last thing she put on in the morning and the first thing she took off at night. When she died, Kihun asked for it. Not the house, not the money, not any of it. Just the necklace. Sable said nothing. Some things did not need a response. They needed a witness. He told me you were the bravest person he had ever met, Chaewon said. He told me while he was lying in a hospital bed with 3 stitches in his face and bruised ribs, and he said it like it was the most important thing that had happened to him that night. Not the attack. Not the hospital. You. The room was very quiet. Sable looked at this man across the table from her and understood something she had not expected to understand. He was not trying to buy her. He was not trying to manage her. He was a father sitting across from the woman who had protected his son, and he did not have the language for what that meant to him, and he was trying to find it in real time, and she was watching him try. I will let you know, she said, about the boundaries, about what I need. I will let you know. He nodded. She stood. She walked out of the restaurant into the Osaka afternoon, the sun doing that thing it does in late September when the heat has broken, but the light has not yet surrendered its intensity, falling across the street in long, clean lines, and she carried with her the specific feeling of a woman who had gone somewhere prepared to refuse everything and had come back holding something she had not planned to accept. It was not a defeat. It felt like the first time in 14 months that someone had given her something without requiring her to earn it first. If you are still here, I need to tell you something. What Sable did not know, walking out of that restaurant, is that someone had already been building a case against her. And the person who shut it down is the last person you would expect. Stay with me. What Sable did not know was that Sarai's sister, a woman named Nam Bo-hyun, had spent the 2 weeks since the incident feeding Sarai a carefully curated portrait of Sable Orion. Each fact was true. The picture they made together was not. A divorced American woman. A work visa in a precarious renewal state. Limited savings. No family in Japan. A woman who had been in the right place at the right time and was now positioned at the center of a billionaire's gratitude. The portrait was assembled by someone who had never sat in the rain for 22 minutes with another person's child. It described a liability. It implied an angle. It suggested that kindness of this magnitude from a stranger was either naive or strategic, and that Sarai should prepare for whichever one it turned out to be. Sarai read the file Bo-hyun's people had compiled. She read it twice. She put it down and sat with it for a long time. Then she did something her sister did not expect. She closed it. Not figuratively. She told Bo-hyun that the investigation was finished and that no further inquiries were to be made. Bo-hyun pushed back. Sarai did not push back in return. She simply repeated herself with the particular calm of a woman who had been pushed back against by far more formidable forces than her sister and had never once been moved. "It is done," she said. "Do not contact her again. Do not have anyone contact her. This is finished." Then on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after the attack, Sarai drove herself to Sable's apartment. No driver, no lawyer, no sister. She parked on the street below and sat in the car for several minutes, looking at the building, which was modest and clean and entirely unremarkable, which was the point. She knocked. Sable answered. There was a moment between them, the half-second where 2 women who have met once under difficult circumstances take the measure of each other again and decide whether the first measurement still holds. "I am not here to cause problems," Sarai said. "I did not think you were," Sable said. "Come in." Sarai sat in the armchair again. The same one. Sable noticed and said nothing about it. They talked for nearly an hour, not easily, not warmly, but with the particular honesty that becomes available when both people have decided independently to stop performing. Sarai said she had come because she needed to see the person and not the file. Sable said she understood that. Sore said she was not going to apologize for her earlier concerns because her concerns were structural and reasonable, and she was not in the habit of apologizing for things that were structurally reasonable. Sable said she did not need an apology. What you need? Sore asked. To be left alone to live my life the way I was living it, Sable said, and for Ki-hoon to be allowed to visit without it being a production every time. Saray was quiet. She looked around the apartment again. This time, she was not assessing the space. She was looking at the things in it. The books on the shelf arranged by size. The single framed photograph on the wall above the desk, a beach Sore did not recognize, taken at the kind of angle that says the photographer was alone and happy about it. The small ceramic bowl on the kitchen counter holding exactly 3 pieces of fruit. The apartment of someone who had curated her solitude with care. He talks about you constantly, Saray said. He told me you taught English. He asked me if I thought you would teach him. She paused. He has tutors, private ones. Very good. He has never once asked to be taught by any of them. Sable was quiet. Saray looked at her. You are not what I expected, she said. I know, Sable said. That is not a compliment. Not yet. It is an observation. I am going to need time with it. Take your time, Sable said. At the door, Saray stopped. She turned back. There was something in her face that had not been there on the first visit. Not warmth, not trust. Something that came before both of those. The willingness to be wrong. I told Chaewon after I met you the first time that you were not what I expected, she said. I told him you said you did not know who Ki-hoon's father was, that you said it the way people say things that are simply true. She paused. I have been thinking about that sentence for 2 weeks. She did not finish the thought. She did not need to. Sable heard what was underneath it. A woman who had built her life on the ability to read people accurately, sitting with the possibility that she had read this one wrong, and choosing to come back and look again, instead of defending the first reading. Some things needed more than a Saturday morning. Some things needed time and the slow work of 2 people deciding separately whether the other one was safe. It was not an alliance. It was not a friendship. It was 2 women standing on opposite sides of something, and both of them, carefully, putting 1 foot forward. Sable watched her go. Then she closed the door and stood in her apartment for a long time in the quiet. Ki-hoon came on a Wednesday after school. No one arranged it. No one scheduled it. Yeonsu had texted Sable that morning to say Ki-hoon had asked for her address and that Chaewon had approved the visit and would she prefer a specific time. She had replied, any time after 4. He knocked at 4:12. She opened the door and a 15-year-old boy was standing in her hallway in a proper coat, a significant upgrade from the soaked blazer she had last seen him in, holding a cloth bag in both hands with the focused directness of someone who had rehearsed what he was going to say and was now delivering it. I wanted to see you, he said. My father knows I am here. The car is downstairs. She looked at him for a moment. Then she stepped back. He came in. He looked around the apartment with careful attention. Not invasive, interested. The attention of someone who is trying to understand a person through the space they have built around themselves. His eyes moved across the books, the photograph, the ceramic bowl, and landed on the small desk by the window where student workbooks sat next to a mug that said, Osaka in hiragana. You grade papers here, he said. Every night. That seems like a lot of work. It is. I love it. He looked at her when she said that. Not surprised, confirmed, as though he had suspected this about her and was pleased to have been right. They talked for 2 hours. She had not planned for 2 hours. Neither had he. It happened the way real conversations happen, one thing leading to another without a map. He told her about school, about Seoul, about the host family, who were kind but who served a particular kind of fish on Thursdays that he could not bring himself to enjoy and did not know how to decline without seeming rude. She told him about Virginia, about teaching, about the specific chaos of a classroom full of 7-year-olds learning the word purple for the first time. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind that arrives without permission and takes over a face completely. She watched it happen and felt something in her chest that she had not felt in a long time, the warmth of making someone laugh who needed to laugh. At some point she made tea, made him hot chocolate because he said he did not like tea yet, but wanted to. He held the mug with both hands the way young people do, and told her without being asked that he had not been sleeping well since the alley, that when he closed his eyes, he felt the concrete against his face, and the rain on his back, and the man's hand on his collar. She told him that made sense, that it was normal, that if it did not ease in a few weeks, he should tell his father because there were people trained to help with exactly this and there was no weakness in asking for them. He nodded. He said he knew. Then he said, very quietly, the thing he had actually come to say. I was not fully unconscious in the alley. He looked at her. I know you think I was, but I was not. Not completely. I could hear you. The whole time. Your voice and the rain and your breathing, and I could tell something was wrong. Not with me. With you. You were shaking. Not just from the cold. Something else. Sable was very still. I heard you say something, he said, when you thought I could not hear. You were holding me and you were shaking and you said something very quietly. Almost to yourself. Not to me. The room was completely silent. The afternoon light from the window fell across the table between them. You said, I am not going to let anyone else fall while I am standing right here. Sable did not move. Ki-hoon reached into the cloth bag. He pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. He unwrapped it carefully, with the precise hands of someone who understood that what he was holding was not casual. It was a bracelet. Thin, silver, handmade. Simple in the way that things are simple when someone has put real thought into choosing simplicity. And attached to the clasp, a small engraved tag. He set it on the table between them and pushed it gently toward her. I had it made, he said. My father offered to have Yeonsu handle it. I said no. I went to the same jeweler who repaired my grandmother's necklace, the one near Namba. I told him what I wanted and I paid for it with my own money because that was important to me. Sable reached for the bracelet. She turned the tag. Engraved in small, clean letters, in English, 2 words, still standing. She put the bracelet down on the table. She put it down because her hands were doing something she did not want them to do, and she needed a moment to find the part of herself that could hold this without breaking open. You heard that? She said. I heard everything, Ki-hoon said. You talked the whole time. I could hear you even when I could not answer. I knew you were there. He paused. And I knew what it was costing you. I could hear it in your breathing, the way it changed, the way you held still when your body wanted to move. I knew something was wrong, and I could not help you, and I could not say anything yet. He stopped. Started again with the directness of someone who has decided to say the whole thing. You said it once, under your breath. I do not think you knew you were saying it. But I heard it, and I kept it. The room was very quiet. Traffic outside. The distant clatter of the building's old elevator moving between floors. The particular sound an afternoon makes when it has become something other than what anyone planned for it to be. Sable looked at the bracelet. She looked at this boy who had been lying on wet concrete in an alley with a stranger's fist above him and had still been listening. Who had heard the thing she said to herself in the dark, the sentence she had not known she was saying. The promise she had made to herself after the divorce. After the kitchen table. After the man who had told her she was not enough, and she had decided, in the rubble of that she was going to stand anyway. that she was going to keep standing and she was not going to let anyone else fall while she was there to prevent it. She had whispered it in an alley in the rain while holding a boy she did not know, and he had heard it and kept it and carried it to a jeweler and had it engraved and brought it back to her. She sat down because she needed to sit. "You remembered that," she said. "I remember everything you said," he told her. His eyes were clear and steady and completely serious. "You kept talking. The whole time. You did not stop. I heard all of it. And I wanted you to know that I know what it cost you to stay." The room was quiet for a long time. She picked up the bracelet. She put it on. The silver was cool against her wrist, and the tag with its 2 engraved words rested against her pulse point, and she could feel her own heartbeat against the letters. Still standing, still standing, still standing. "Can I come back?" he said. "Not just today. Can I come back and visit you?" "Regularly." She looked at this boy. This serious, careful, brave boy who had held on to his grandmother's necklace while being beaten and had heard her secret promise in the rain and had turned it into something she could wear. "You can come back," she said. He nodded with the gravity of someone who had received a serious answer to a serious question. Then he finished his hot chocolate and put his coat on and stopped in the doorway and turned back. "Sable." "Yes." Still standing. She looked at him. "Still standing," she said. He left. She listened to his footsteps on the stairs. She stood in her apartment with the bracelet on her wrist, and the afternoon light falling across the table where the tissue paper still lay, and the mug of hot chocolate sat half-finished, and she understood something she had not understood before. She had said those words to herself in the darkest moment she had had in this city. She had said them because she needed to hear them, and a half-conscious boy in the rain had caught them and held them and brought them back. Not as a gift, but as proof. Proof that the thing she had been building inside herself, the strength she was never sure was real, was real. Someone else had heard it. And now it was engraved in silver on her wrist, and she could feel it every time her heart beat. That was not nothing. That was everything. If you have been watching this story and thinking about the people in your own life, the ones who turned toward instead of away, the ones who stayed when they could have kept walking, hold on to that. Because that is what this story is really about. Not the money, not the power, not the investigation or the visa or the billionaire in the corridor making decisions at midnight. Not even the bracelet, as beautiful as it is. This story is about the turn. The single moment when a woman heard a sound in the rain and aimed herself toward it instead of away from it. Before she knew who he was, before she knew what it would cost, before she knew what would come after. She turned because that was the only direction that made sense to her. And the boy in the alley, half-conscious, beaten, holding onto his grandmother's necklace because letting go was not something he knew how to do with things that mattered. He heard her. Through the rain and the pain and the fear, he heard the woman holding him make a promise to herself. And he kept it. And he brought it back. That is the whole thing. Right there. A woman who stayed. A boy who listened. And the words between them that neither of them planned to say or hear, but that changed both of their lives because they were true. Subscribe if this is your kind of story, because there is so much more to tell. And leave me a comment about the moment that stayed with you. Because mine is Ki-hoon in the alley, conscious enough to hear a stranger whisper the truest thing she had, and choosing to remember it, not because anyone asked him to, because it mattered. Still standing. That is the whole thing.